today we'll be looking at essentially kind of unsupervised learning kind of application for this, but of course EM is kind of more general. So we'll be looking at a very simple case, a very simple class of mixture models, which can basically be used for doing soft clustering. So this will be kind of related to the clustering lecture, like the k-means that we discussed a few lectures back, right? So we'll be looking at a probabilistic version of this. Um, right. So we looked at k-means, right? And essentially we looked at k-means and hierarchical clustering as a mechanism for unsupervised learning. And we saw that k-means is basically kind of a coordinate descent, a kind of block coordinate descent scheme where you're doing it in some kind of a alternating minimization. So this is like an alternating minimization approach, right? So today we'll be looking at a very simple kind of a probabilistic model, right? Again for the same problem for unsupervised learning. But the idea is that instead of kind of doing hard clustering, what I mean by hard clustering is essentially assigning each point to a unique cluster. Can we do some kind of a probabilistic clustering, right? So this will provide us a method to do probabilistic clustering. Okay. Yeah, so unfortunately, k-means when it does a hard assignment to exactly one cluster, there is no uncertainty in the class membership, right? So essentially, because of this, it is easy for k-means to kind of get stuck at certain local optima, right? Of course, you can initialize k-means with different initializations and kind of get different results, right? But overall, k-means does not assign some kind of a probabilistic value, right? So it doesn't say that with a certain probability it belongs to cluster one, with a different probability it belongs to cluster two, right? And this is a problem because there can be data points which lie kind of in between two clusters, and they are obviously going to be assigned to one cluster, right? Whereas realistically, we want to say that points which are clearly in one cluster should have a high probability of belonging to that cluster, whereas those points which are kind of in between two clusters or like in between several clusters, they should be more uncertain, right? So this is the use of soft clustering. So soft clustering essentially enables this via a kind of probabilistic approach. Okay. So stop me if you have any questions. Of course, we are just building up the intuition over here for this, right? Okay. So yeah, so the probabilistic clustering will the idea is as follows, right? So we want to kind of try a probabilistic model, and we want to define appropriately a probabilistic model over the data points, right? And essentially with this we can kind of define an underlying probability model, right? Or we can learn a kind of underlying probability model that we can say to kind of even possibly generate new data points, right? Now, one issue with this is that we don't have any labels, right? So we want to do this in a completely unsupervised manner without having any labels. So this is something we want to keep in mind. So what will be the way we will design such a kind of probabilistic clustering paradigm, right? So what we want is that we want to be able to define some kind of a distribution, right? So this is some kind of a probability distribution one, this is a distribution two, right? And obviously this is parameterized in some way. So think of this like some kind of a normal, right? So this is normal, this is parameterized with a distribution with a mean mu1 and a mean sigma 2, sorry, a variance sigma 2, right? And similarly, this is a normal, then this is with a mean sigma 2 and a variance, sorry, a mean mu2 and a variance sigma 2, right? And as you can imagine, right, for this cluster, the mean, so first of all, there is some overlap, right, between these two clusters. So like this region, for example, kind of lies probabilistically in both clusters. Of course, it's probably closer to the mean. So the probability of these points belonging to cluster 1 is higher. But still there is a non-zero probability because it kind of lies in between both clusters, right? In fact, this point probability probably is closer to the centroid of this cluster as opposed to this red cluster, right? The other thing is that the variance could be different, right? So, for example, this the kind of variance of this cluster is smaller than the variance of this larger cluster. So we want to enable clusters of different shapes and sizes, right? And also we want to enable the clusters can overlap. So all right. So consider the following parameterization, right? So we are given a data set x1 till xn, and we are given a mixture model with parameters theta, and these kind of inner parameters are lambda 1 to lambda k and theta 1 to theta k, right? And one way to parameterize this, which also is a kind of very natural parameterization, is to define p of x given this parameters theta, right? So p of x given theta is equal to sum of y from 1 to k lambda y multiplied by py of x given theta y, right? So theta y here, so basically y is like the cluster index, right? And lambda y is in some sense the probability of y. So lambda y is nothing but the probability of y, right, given theta. And this is basically what is there over here, right? And py of x given theta y is basically the given that we are belonging to cluster y, what is the probability of the point x, right? And for each point x, we want to have this basically sum over all possible cluster indices, right? So in some sense, you can think of this as follows. Had we had y as a class, right, then we would have been able to write the quantity as p of x comma y given theta, right? So since we don't have a y, right, we are defining this as a joint distribution. So this basically is nothing but a joint distribution, right? So this quantity is nothing but p of y given theta, right? So essentially p of x comma y given theta is nothing but p of x given theta comma y, right, multiplied by p of y given theta, right? So this quantity is nothing but p of x comma y given theta. So what we are doing is that we have this p of x comma y given theta. Y is this class, but it's not really a class. It's like this. It's like the cluster centroid, right? And then given this just kind of joint distribution, you are actually kind of marginalizing out the cluster index, right? So you're doing the sum over y, and that's how you achieve now just p of x given theta. Does it make sense? So this is a very standard paradigm that is used for a kind of lot of unsupervised learning problems, right? So if you don't know the classes, right, which you don't know obviously in unsupervised learning, and you kind of have some intuition of what your p of x comma y given theta should be. For example, here you're assuming that you know this distribution, which is p of x given theta comma y, and you also know this p of y given theta, right? P of y given theta is just basically a kind of scalar like a lambda, it's just a parameter lambda, right? Then given this intuition, you can easily define this kind of marginalized probability distribution as p of x given theta. Yes, Nathan.
Could you explain why we went over or why you introduced the p of x given theta and y with regards to the full expression that you circled? Like you mentioned a joint distribution, but why have you done that?
Okay, so basically p of x given theta comma y is nothing but this quantity, right? What we are writing as py of x given theta y. So this is nothing but this quantity, and p of y given theta is actually lambda y. Does it answer your question? Maybe I didn't understand your question completely. Was this your question?
Yeah. So with those substitutions in mind, you could eventually the summon gives you the what would be the probability for the joint distribution.
Yes. So basically, the circled thing that I've circled is the joint distribution of p of x comma y given theta, right? And now what I'm doing is that I'm marginalizing out y. So when I marginalize out y, I just get p of x given theta. So I just sum over all possible values of y. So in this case, y is nothing but the cluster index. So in some sense, there's this loose connection. You can think of each cluster index as a class, right? But you don't know the classes. So whenever you're doing your maximum likelihood estimation, right? So basically, finally, we will be doing a maximum likelihood estimation, right? Or something like this. So when we are doing the maximum likelihood estimation, we want some kind of a probability distribution, but we don't want a distribution over y because you don't know y. You just have the x's. Does it make sense?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is a mixture component, and essentially we somehow would parameterize this appropriately. So for example, this would be a normal. Yes.
Yes, Professor.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to understand how lambda y is dependent on theta y. If I understand this correctly, theta, if we are taking Gaussian mixture models, then each theta y would represent mu y and sigma y of that corresponding mixture, right? Of that corresponding.
Yeah. So
model.
actually, this is not the same as theta. So sorry, this is basically like the parallel theta, the upper script theta. So this is this theta. So this is like the entire set of parameters.
Yeah. That part is fine, but
Okay.
is lambda y dependent on all of the parameters or?
No, so
only on-
lambda y is just this kind of multiplicative prior quantity. So it's just the prior probability of the p of y. So it doesn't depend on this theta, for example. So the lambda 1 to lambda k doesn't depend on theta 1 to theta k.
But we are using the subscript y.
We are using the subscript y. So yeah, so this depends on the cluster ID, right? So each cluster has a prior probability.
Okay, so as soon as a point comes in, then we are like irrespective of its attributes.
Yes.
We are okay.
Yeah, so basically, so in some sense, for example, lambda y will depend on like the size of the cluster, for example, right? So
Okay.
very few points are there in that cluster, then it will have a low probability of falling in that cluster in the first place, irrespective of knowing anything about x. But finally, this does get multiplied to p of x given theta as well.
It's
So
more
you
like
have-
a normalizing factor.
Yeah, I mean this is really like a prior, right? This is just the cluster probability, and you want to jointly learn both of lambda and theta. So lambda and theta are both the parameters that you want to learn. So it's not that lambda is going to magically be given to you. You want to learn actually lambdas and thetas.
Okay.
So concretely, right? Theta y is, suppose you assume that this is a Gaussian, then theta y will be mu y comma sigma y, right?
Yeah.
So this will be the Gaussian parameters, and lambda y will be just the prior probability of that cluster ID.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can think of, like as I said, we can think of lambda y as p of y equal to y given theta, right? And
Yeah. So given the complete mixture model, what is the probability of this mixture being picked up? That's what lambda y represents.
yes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So now so far so good. Okay. So essentially the intuition is as follows. Now I have three normals, right? So this is basically mu1 sigma 1, this is mu2 sigma 2, and this is mu3 sigma 3, right? And actually there's a lambda as well associated. So sorry. So there is like, this is essentially lambda 1, mu 1, sigma 1, right? And this is lambda 2, mu 2, sigma 2, right? So sorry, I just arbitrarily put the indices here, but somehow we are combining these, right? So this is lambda 1 multiplied by this kind of Gaussian distribution plus lambda 2 multiplied by this Gaussian distribution plus lambda 3, right? So the green would be something like what the mixture model would represent. So it's basically this kind of weighted sum of these different kind of individual Gaussians, right? And in this case, actually, it's a uniform, I think. So here, lambdas are all 1, or maybe 1 by 3. Lambdas are all 1 by 3, right? But this framework actually allows for lambdas to be not uniform. So you could kind of allow for specific lambdas as well. Okay. So now in d dimensions, right? One kind of very simple way, which is actually done in Gaussian mixture models. That's why the name Gaussian, right? Because each of the individual components is a Gaussian. Okay. So what's the intuition here? So basically, p of x given mu comma sigma is nothing but 1 divided by this term, which is the normalization factor of this Gaussian, right? Multiplied by exp raised to minus half of x minus mu transpose sigma inverse x minus mu, right? So this is this kind of this is this vector matrix vector product, right? And in some sense, this is like this generalization of the 1D one-dimensional case, where you have essentially x minus mu square divided by sigma square, right? So here sigma inverse actually is a covariance matrix, which is basically like the variance. So sigma is a covariance matrix, sorry, and then you're taking the inverse of this, right? And in some sense, the covariance matrix, right, kind of models the interaction between the different variables. So it's not just the variance of the individual axis, right? But if the covariance matrix is not diagonal, then it actually kind of is more general and also takes into account how related are two variables, right, and things like that. Of course, if the matrix is diagonal, so basically the kind of diagonal elements here correspond to the variances of the individual variables. So the covariance matrix actually is a symmetric positive definite matrix, right? So it's positive definite, which means that all the eigenvalues are positive and the matrix is invertible. And it also ensures that the quadratic form is concave. So essentially this function here is a concave function. So it's basically like a log concave distribution. Gaussian is a log concave distribution, right? So the probability value itself as a function of x is not convex or concave, right? So the probability itself is not, but if you take a log, then it is actually log concave, right? So that makes, for example, solving the maximum likelihood somewhat easy for a Gaussian. In fact, for a Gaussian is actually you can get the maximum likelihood in a closed form. We actually saw this when we looked at like the simple Gaussian case, right? Where we looked at maximum likelihood estimation and the maximum e posteriori estimation and so on and so forth. Okay, so what is the extension to the Gaussian mixture models, right? So the Gaussian mixture models, we define this parameters theta k, which is nothing but mu k comma lambda sigma k. And now we have this distribution, right? So basically this is what we had as p of x given theta k, right? Is nothing but p of x given mu k comma sigma k. And this is 1 over square root of 2 pi raised to d, determinant of sigma k, multiplied by exp raised to minus half multiplied by this term, right? And the question is that how do we learn this model? So what's the learning step, right? So obviously we know so we can write down the likelihood function and but before even writing down a likelihood function, right, we can just think about the following. So if we just look at the k component alone, without looking at the other the kind of other components, right, or without looking at the other mixture, we just look at once so basically assume that we have somehow found a partition, right? So we know what the kth component of the, like basically what the kth cluster should be. So given the kth cluster points, what is the maximum likelihood kind of estimators, right? So for a univariate Gaussian, basically this is like k equal to 1, right? So for a univariate Gaussian, the mean is nothing but 1 over n, the sum of I from 1 to n xi, right? So this is the simple mean. And the sigma square, sorry. So actually univariate means the dimensionality is 1. But basically both of this is for a single Gaussian. Right? So for a single Gaussian given x1 to xn, and you just have a single Gaussian, then this is the case for the dimensionality to be 1, right? And if you have larger dimensionalities, then what you do is you just compute the mean as usual. Right? So this is a vector in R h to d. And the sigma MLE is obtained by taking 1 over n sum of I from 1 to n xi minus mu multiplied by xi minus mu transpose, right? So this is the covariance matrix, the kind of data covariance matrix, right? And this is exactly what are the MLE parameters of a Gaussian. So I'm not proving this, but you can actually kind of write down the expression similar to what we saw in the Gaussian case for maximum likelihood, right? You can write down the expression for the multivariate Gaussian and derive these terms. So even if you have k Gaussian distribution, right, we can do something similar. So if I'm assuming that nk corresponds to the kth cluster, right, then corresponding to the kth cluster, I take the mean with respect to the points that belong to the kth cluster, right, and I take the variance of the points that belong to the kth cluster, right? And given the clustering, right, so given the assignment n1 to nk, I can compute the mu1 to mu k. Sorry, basically mu, so basically mu1 to mu k and sigma 1 to sigma k, right? So I can compute the MLE parameters given the clustering. But obviously we are not given the clustering, right? So we want to jointly learn the clusterings together with the parameters. So what this means is that we want to learn the mixture assignments as well. So for this, we need to consider this kind of more complicated joint distribution. So given my data points xi, right, and given my mixture assignments y from 1 to k. So basically I'm given x1 until xn. So this is a standard maximum likelihood problem, right? So I'm given x1 to xn as n data points. And these data points now belong to k clusters. So they don't anymore belong to one cluster, they belong to k possible clusters. So I can write down the maximum likelihood very similarly, right? So I have p of xi given theta. We know that the p of xi given theta is nothing but this term, right? So it's the sum of y from 1 to k, p of xi comma y given theta, right? So this is this term over here, right? This term over here is nothing but p of xi given theta, right? And all I'm doing now is I'm summing this, but this expression immediately becomes much more complicated in a single Gaussian, right? Because in a single Gaussian, I don't have this sum anymore. So if k is equal to 1, then it's just a product. So if it's just a product, I can actually compute this fairly efficiently in MLE, right? And we saw this when we looked at MLE a few lectures back. But now I have this product of a sum over k quantities, right? And as a result, this Argmax over theta actually is this kind of more complicated non-convex optimization problem. And a common way to solve this is actually using the EM algorithm. So we'll be looking at what the EM algorithm is in a minute. But I just want to see, are there any questions until this point? Or is this clear? Okay. Yeah. So far, right? So far, we only know how to compute the probabilities of each mixture component. So basically, in particular, given a clustering assignment, we can compute the parameters of that particular cluster, right? So we can solve for mu k and sigma k given a clustering mk, right? But now, like as I said, we don't know the clustering, so we need to kind of solve the assignment problem jointly with the parameter learning problem, right? Okay, so in the case of Gaussian mixture model, these are the parameterization, right? So we know that P of xi given y comma theta is nothing but a normal distribution of xi given mu y comma sigma y, right? So I'm given my y, this is the Gaussian mixture, and essentially the probability of P of y is lambda y. Yes.
Professor, in the
Yes.
previous slide, just one small clarification. So
Sure.
in the last equation, we wrote probability of xi given y equal to y and theta.
Mm-hmm.
So given y equal to y and theta, does that essentially mean we are only considering the parameters for the cluster y?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
I
this
was
is,
just
this is exactly what is written over here, right? So P of xi given y equal to y comma theta is nothing but normal of xi given mu y comma sigma y, right?
yes.
And similarly, this term, which is P of y, this is nothing but lambda y. So this is lambda y, and
Yeah.
this is actually a normal of basically mu y comma sigma y, right? Or normal of xi given mu y sigma y, basically. So yeah. Okay. Any other question? Any other questions? Okay. So, well, I mean, one approach is that you can go ahead and try to solve this problem, right? So you can, for example, go ahead and differentiate the MLE objective, right? And this will provide a system of equations. But unfortunately, this will actually turn out to be very difficult to solve in general, right? So the solution is to actually modify the objective and make the optimization somehow easier. So this is where expectation maximization comes in. Expectation maximization is kind of this very broad framework that actually applies for several kind of mixture model problems. We are looking at a very simple problem called Gaussian mixture models. Um, I was actually thinking of covering hidden Markov models, but looks like we won't have time to cover hidden Markov models. But the idea of hidden Markov model is very similar to Gaussian mixture model, except that we are now doing it a little bit, it's basically making things a little bit more complicated, right? So first of all, it's a supervised scenario, and it is actually a scenario where you are not just kind of classifying kind of single points, but you have somehow a structured space. So for example, you have like a graphical model, which is slightly more complicated, right? So you have a slightly more complicated graphical model and you're looking at the learning problem over there. But essentially what I wanted to get at is that this expectation maximization can be used for a very rich class of mixture models, like the Gaussian mixture model, kind of hidden Markov model and things like that. So what's the expectation maximization idea, right? So expectation maximization tries to somehow simplify this problem because this is kind of difficult to even write down, right? So just at the top of the bat, you can see that this is actually a sum over Gaussians, right? And somehow the sum over Gaussians is very unwieldy. So even if you were to do a log, right, because you take a log on both sides, what you will end up getting is you will end up getting somehow this a term like this, which will be a sum of I from 1 to n, log of sum over y, p of xi given y comma theta, right, multiplied by p of y given theta, right, something like this. So you now have this log term, but inside the log you have the sum over exp. So there is no way that the log and the exp cancels out, right, because you have a log of a sum over exps, and this makes it actually much harder to kind of analyze. So that's the reason why in EM you can actually kind of somehow approximate this using the Jensen's inequality, right? So what's the Jensen's inequality? So the Jensen's inequality states that given a convex function f, right, and kind of values a1 to ak which belong to 0 to 1, right, such that the sum of a1 to ak is 1. So this is basically a kind of convex combination, right? So given a convex combination of ai multiplied by f of xi, right, this is greater than or equal to f of this convex combination, right? And if this function is concave, then actually this gets reversed. So given a concave function psi, we will have that a1 of psi x1, right, plus ak of psi of xk, right, is actually less than or equal to psi of a1 x1 plus ak xk, right? So anyways, I'm not going to prove this, but just kind of it suffices to know that this inequality holds, right? And actually not very hard to prove it. It kind of follows from just looking at kind of simple properties of convexity and concavity. But given this inequality, we can immediately kind of write this down more easily, right? So here I have written this down in terms of the joint distribution. So this is joint of xi comma y. Of course, recall that this is nothing but p of xi given y equal to y comma theta, right, multiplied by p of y equal to y given theta, right? So this is what we had earlier, but you can kind of write this down in a joint term, okay? Then what you do is that you introduce kind of this, you introduce kind of pseudo parameters called qi, right? And these qi's can be somehow jointly learned now, okay? So you kind of modify the problem a little bit by kind of introducing this QIs, and now you have this new. So basically, given this L theta, we have this new problem now where we are defining objective in terms of f of theta comma q. Okay, so for any value of q, you can show that the log likelihood, which is log of L theta, is actually greater than or equal to the sum over I from 1 to n, sum over y from 1 to k, qi multiplied by log of this quantity, right? So basically what this means is that now we have got this slightly different term, but this term is slightly advantageous, right? Because we have in kind of inherently taken this log of the sum of the quantities to a sum of the logs, right? So we have converted the log of a sum to a sum of the logs, right? Of course, we have done this at a cost. So we have done this at a cost because now we need to kind of somehow jointly optimize Q as well, right? But note that this objective, which is f of theta comma q, is actually greater than, is basically less than log of L theta, right? So essentially what you can do is you can notice immediately that log of L theta, like the likelihood, is actually greater than this for every q. So in fact, this is going to be greater than, this is going to be greater than max of q of f of theta comma q, right? So what this means is that when we are solving this maximum likelihood, basically the likelihood maximization problem, we can actually maximize over both theta and q, right? And in some sense, the max value here will essentially be like a tight approximation of the log likelihood originally, right? It's not going to be accurate, but it's going to be it's going to be pretty tight as long as we are maximizing over q. So essentially what we can do, right? Okay, so this is just explaining this a little bit, but I think, is this clear actually, this kind of derivation of using Jensen's inequality and getting this term, is this clear? Any questions? Okay. So the likelihood max of theta over log of L theta, right? This term is actually going to be greater than, this term is going to be greater than max of theta comma q, right, of this term, which is h of q comma theta. Okay, so essentially what's going on in EM is that we are replacing this log of L theta by a lower bound, right? And we are trying to maximize this tightest lower bound, essentially. Okay, so is this clear actually? And we'll be actually looking at an algorithm now that can solve this joint maximization of theta comma q. And this will be doing via a framework very similar to k-means, what we had for k-means, right? Okay, yeah, so basically going from here to here, so going from here to here, you're just multiplying q, this is 1, right? As long as basically, okay, so the only assumption is that qi is strictly greater than 0, right? Otherwise, if it's 0, then this denominator is 1. You assume that this denominator is 1 if it's 0, right? But you can actually assume that this qi is greater than 0, okay? And then when you go from here to here, you actually use Jensen's inequality, right? Because this is essentially this term, you can kind of club this term, right? And this into 1, right? And then you have the qi's as this kind of so if you recall Jensen's inequality, right? This function, by the way, is concave. So if you recall Jensen's inequality, this term is nothing but psi over the sum over I ai xi, right? And with Jensen's inequality, we have that this term is actually greater than sum over I ai psi of xi, right? So this was Jensen's inequality. So this is exactly what we use. This is exactly what we use over here with this log function, right? And yeah, that's it. Okay. So now the question is, what is this optimization problem, right? So we want to kind of jointly optimize theta and q over this objective. Unfortunately, this objective is not jointly concave in theta and qi, right? So essentially, this is not jointly concave. In general, there is not anything much we can say, right? So we would probably kind of have to settle for a local maxima, like what we saw for k-means. But very similar to k-means, we can actually kind of come up with a block coordinate ascent scheme, or essentially an alternating minimization scheme, or in this case, maximization scheme, right? Because we are maximizing the likelihood. So the idea of alternating maximization is that we will start with an arbitrary initialization, right? Theta 0 and q 0. And then we will sequentially, in steps, first optimize over theta and then optimize over q. Okay? So the E step, in which is called the expectation step, right? In expectation maximization, requires solving this problem, right? So it requires basically qt plus 1 requires argmax of q1 to qn. Q1 to qn essentially is like a scalar quantity, right? So now given my data set, essentially qiy is this parameter. I want to optimize this qiy parameter, right? So it is this sum of I from 1 to n, sum of y from 1 to k, qi, multiplied by log of p given qi. So here you can assume that this quantity is known. So you know the log of p. So basically you know what p is, right? And given what p is, how do you essentially optimize over q1 to qn? So what you can do is that you can actually use the method of Lagrange multipliers, right? So I'll just give you a very, very high level idea of what's going on here. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to solve qt plus 1 belongs to argmax of q1 until qn, right? And this is the sum of I from 1 to n, sum of y from 1 to k, right? So actually, sorry, each of this qi actually has a value for each y. So each of this qi is a probability distribution. So sorry, I said mistakenly, I said that it's a scalar, but it's not a scalar. Each of this qi actually is a vector. It's in fact a probability distribution over the y's, right? So it's qiy, multiplied by this log of this p quantity. You can assume that this quantity is given, divided by qiy, right? Plus you will introduce some kind of Lagrange multiplier parameters here. So you will do I from 1 to n, maybe mu I, right? Multiplied by, so sorry, actually what you do is you add mu multiplied by the sum over qi, right? Sorry, a sum over, okay. So sorry about that. So you would do something like this. So you would do the sum over I from 1 to n, right? And for each I you have this parameter because you have mu I, and for each I you need that the sum over y actually sums up to 1, right? So you would have that this sum over y qiy minus 1. Is this clear to everyone? Any questions? Is this clear why we have written this down? Yes, Nikhil.
Could you go over again what the yeah, I'm not entirely sure why the thing to the right with the -1 term was written.
Oh, why this was written?
Yeah, the right sum, yeah.
Oh, so this is okay. So this is because this is okay. So maybe let's do the following, right? So let's write down this optimization problem. So qt plus 1 is argmax q1 to qn. Each of these qi's are vectors, okay? And this is a sum of I from 1 to n, sum of y from 1 to k, qiy into log p divided by qiy, such that for all I from 1 to n, right, the sum over y from 1 to k, qiy adds up to 1. So we want that the qi should be a probability distribution. Okay, so this is a constraint optimization problem. So now what we will do is we will actually define the Lagrangian, right? We will define the Lagrangian of q comma mu, right? And the Lagrangian now is going to be I from 1 to n, y from 1 to k, qiy multiplied by log p over qiy, right? Plus sum over I from 1 to n, mu I multiplied by sum of y from 1 to k, qiy minus 1. So this is basically kind of writing down the Lagrangian problem. Does it make sense? And now what we will do is that we will actually take a max over mu, right? And somehow compute what the optimal solution is. So it turns out actually over here that we can, in fact, once we write down the Lagrangian, I'm not going to go ahead and derive this. Yes, yes.
Professor, I still don't understand why QI should be a probability. Like like if I have to guess an explanation, then it is because we are using Jensen's inequality and we need sum of all
Yes.
AI to be 1.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
But from there, when we come here, like each multiplication factor is qi of y. So what we need is over all the points, we need qi of whichever whichever label they are assigned to. We need qi of that label to be 1. So it's over all QIs, right?
No, it's overall y. Because we'll be applying Jensen's inequality for each I over here. So this is log. Okay, so here Jensen inequality, this is the log, right? So it's log of the sum of I ai xi is greater than the sum of the logs, right? So Jensen's inequality is being applied to this part for each I. Does it make sense? So for each I, you are taking a sum over the QIY multiplied by this term.
Okay.
So the AIs over here is actually QIY and the sum is over Y actually. So maybe this will make it clear. The sum actually is over Y in the Jensen inequality, in the application of Jensen inequality, and each of the AY is QIY for each I. So that's why the sum over Y QIY must be equal to 1.
Yes, Professor, it is clear. Now it was just difficult to visualize the entire thing to you.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm not going to solve this, right? But you will see that actually you can just kind of using the method of Lagrange multipliers for this constraint that the sum over y qi equal to 1, you will get this term that qi t plus 1 y is nothing but the probability of y given x equal to xi comma theta t. So again, when we were applying this like E step, right? We were assuming that this entire term is known. This term is known, right? So we are not optimizing for theta t. We are assuming that theta t is known, and given theta t, we are trying to find what the qi t plus 1 should be. Okay. So qi t plus 1 has this closed form solution, and this is essentially this E step in this expectation maximization, right? So we are essentially getting the Q's to be this probability distribution directly. Okay. And now conversely, the M step is that with a fixed Q's, with Q's being fixed, we maximize the objective over theta. Okay. So we are doing an argmax over theta of the sum of I from 1 to n, sum of y from 1 to k, qi of t plus 1 of y multiplied by log of this probability divided by qi t plus 1 y, right? So here q is known at t plus 1, right? And we will solve this for theta t plus 1. So it turns out that in the case of Gaussian mixture models, this update also actually is a closed form solution. By the way, this is not necessarily true for every model, so it depends on specifically what the choice of the P is. It turns out to be in closed form, and I think part of the reason this is very similar to k-means if you kind of look back, right? Because probability, the P over here is nothing but exp of minus basically xi minus mu, right? Minus mu y, right? Transpose sigma inverse xi minus mu y, right? And as an exp of this, so you take a log and then you just get this term, which is minus of this term, right? And then what you will notice is that this is nothing but a convex combination of this, sorry, not convex combination, but basically it's like this sum over y from 1 to k, qi t plus 1 of y multiplied by this term, which is basically xi minus mu y transpose sigma inverse blah blah blah, right? So this term, and there's the outside term, outside sum. So now the log and exp get cancelled, and we have this simple sum over this quadratic. So basically a quadratic expression. And this quadratic expression can actually be solved in a way very similar to what you would do with just a simple normal distribution, right? Except that now there is this additional weighted term over here, but this is very similar to a maximum likelihood of a normal distribution. And because of that, we can actually kind of get the MLE estimation problem easily, right? So so maybe we'll come back to this, but for the M step, right? The expressions are again very similar. So it's again very similar to a standard distribution where you're taking a sum over xi divided by n, except that now you don't take a division by n anymore. You're actually dividing by this term, which is the sum of I from 1 to n of qi t of y for each y, right? So this becomes a normalization factor, and we're taking this weighted sum over xi divided by this weight. And similarly, sigma y t plus 1 is basically given a slightly more complicated expression. But again, you can, this is kind of a weighted combination of the covariance matrices, right? A weighted sum of the covariance matrices. And finally, the lambda y, you can also solve for the lambda y. And lambda y is 1 over n, the sum of I from 1 to n, qi t of y. So this is exactly now the EM algorithm, right? So we'll kind of come back over here. So we start with random parameters. So the random parameters is you initialize the Qs randomly, right? So Q0, you initialize mu0 randomly, sigma 0, right? And also lambda 0. So these will be the 4 parameters that you will initialize. The E step maximizes the lower bound on the log sum, right? And here you will basically solve for Qt plus 1. And the M step, you will actually do the MLE estimation problem for fixed Qs. And here you will actually get mu t plus 1, sigma t plus 1, and lambda t plus 1. And then you iterate between the Q step and the M step. So this is exactly the way you would solve for this, right? So you solve the E step first over the Qs, and then you solve the M step, and you iterate this way. Are there any questions? Yeah, Nathan, yes.
So how did the lambda terms make their way back into these equations again? Because in the last couple of slides, I haven't really seen where the lambdas have been. But
the lambdas are inside over here, right? So the P, okay, so I see. So actually I forgot a lambda in this expression. So this term is actually P of, sorry. So there is actually a lambda, that gets multiplied, a lambda y minus. So there's a lambda y that gets multiplied. So lambda is just a scalar that gets multiplied beforehand to this quantity. So P of xi comma y equal to y given theta, right, is nothing but P of y given theta, which is lambda y, multiplied by P of xi given y comma theta, right? So this is this Gaussian. So this is the normal distribution, and this term is this lambda y.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Is this clear? Yes.
Professor, I must have missed.
Sorry,
this,
so actually just a question. Is Siva your first name or
so my
Sai?
first name has 3 words: Siva, Sai, Nagendra. So I'm used to Nagendra, but in my passport Siva is written first.
Oh, I see. Okay, Nagendra. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Professor. So you must have already told this, but can you please tell why one step is called expectation and the other step is called maximization?
Oh, I see. So this is actually, I mean, again, EM is a very broad algorithm, right? So in this case, it turns out that, it's not really an expectation step, but typically when you do this for like hidden Markov models, right? The E step involves actually solving oftentimes an expectation in general. In this case, actually, it turns out that you can directly get the Qs as the probability, right, of the Y thing. But you can, in some sense, view this as also an expectation, actually. You can view this as the expected value of, basically, of Y, right? So let me think about this, actually. In this case, yeah, so this is, I think it's a little bit more complicated to view this as an expectation. I think you need to view this as, if you define P as the probability, right, and 1 minus P, so basically P as the probability that you choose the cluster Y, and 1 minus P as the probability that you don't choose this cluster, right? then in some sense, this is an expectation. This is the expected value over this random variable. But typically, right? Typically here, this kind of directly can be written down in terms of the probability. But typically, this step requires actually solving an expectation over a distribution. That's why this is called the E step. But the way I like to view this is actually this is like more aligned, more along the lines of a k-means, right? And this step is really the assignment step, right? Because you are computing this q probabilities, right? And the q probabilities are really kind of you are getting that given a particular x, what is the probability that it should lie in one of the k clusters, right? So this is really the assignment probability. Had it been a hard clustering, we would have assigned, given an x, we would have assigned this to one of the k clusters. Here we are doing a soft assignment. So the E step really is doing a soft assignment, and the M step is basically finding the mean parameter, the means, right, and the other parameters.
Oh, M step is about finding means. Like,
yeah, so you're finding the means and you're finding the variances and you're finding the lambdas, right? In the k means, so again getting back to just k means. So k means, this is what the mean step is, right? You just find the means over here. But in general, for Gaussian mixtures, you are basically computing all three. You're computing the means, you're computing the sigmas, and you're computing lambda. So this is like the assignment step, right? You're assigning the soft clusterings, and this is the parameter learning given the assignment. Parameter learning given the assignment. Okay.
so are these alternative names valid only for Gaussian mixtures, or like, for example, even if we use hidden Markov model, then do we have?
Yeah, so as I said, for the hidden Markov model, actually this step requires computing an expectation. So it's still an assignment. It's something like an assignment only, but it involves computing actually an expectation. But the names remain the same. It's still basically one of the steps involves a parameter learning, right? And one of the steps involves something like an assignment.
Okay.
Given the parameters, you're assigning probabilities to the points, basically. And you kind of alternate between this. So EM is this very kind of nice framework that allows for alternating minimization. In fact, a lot of work after EM started viewing many problems in machine learning as alternating minimization, right? And the nice thing is that the original problem actually becomes is kind of much harder. You can also solve this, by the way, directly using like some kind of a gradient descent or something, right? That is another way people view it. But actually, expectation maximization oftentimes becomes much easier to solve in practice, right? Because the two inner problems are very easy, and you just iterate over this multiple times, and it works pretty well in practice. So that's the reason why most common techniques today use EM, but gradient-based methods are also kind of becoming more and more popular these days for solving this problem. Okay, so I think we are almost out of time, and I think we are actually almost done actually. So this is the intuition with Gaussian mixture models, right? So you start here, you have a certain probability. These are like basically green, blue, and red clusters. And each point now has a certain probability of belonging to a green, belonging to a blue, and belonging to a red cluster, right? And you start the EM something like this, and then over time, you start assigning more and more points, right? So this is the step. You have, again, these three clusters. Now there is a lot of overlap, right? And then you do one more step and the overlap reduces. So now the green, and also as the overlap reduces, these points get assigned more and more to one cluster, right? So again, this is the third iteration of EM. You already have this fairly green. This is more and more red. This is more and more blue, right? And again, towards the end, like this entire region is blue, right? This is completely green, and this is more and more red. But again, I think because of soft clustering, you can see some of these points, right? These points actually, though it's red, there is still some amount of blue that is there over here, right? And similarly, these points actually lie in between the blue and the red and the green, right? And finally, this is the fifth iteration of EM, and at around the 20th iteration, this becomes more and more. Here you're kind of getting to the hard clustering, right? Because you have clustered the points cleanly. But you can obviously imagine a scenario that you have your points that are more and more points in between. So when you have points which are cleanly separated, EM would probably kind of end up becoming very similar to k-means, right? And the probabilities are very close to 1. But obviously, your data is not oftentimes well separated, and the boundaries are kind of much easier to see using a soft assignment rather than a hard assignment. So some final properties of EM, like k-means, converges to a local optimum, right? And this is because each iteration actually improves the log likelihood. So what you can actually show is that both the E step and the M step always kind of improve the likelihood. So they actually never decrease the likelihood function, right? So we always improve the likelihood function. So essentially, when there is no more improvement, that's where the algorithm stops and we reach a local maximum. Okay, so that's it. I think this is the end. So any last questions?